Okay, so we're going to grout the tub surround, and we're going to be using a white grout. Now when it comes to white, I'm always really sensitive about it because most of the bathrooms I tear out that have white grout, it's either yellow or it's stained, and molding. Molding's a different issue, but white is really the toughest grout to keep nice looking. And so when I do white grout, I really recommend using epoxy grout. This is Spectralock. This is the original formula. It comes with a two-part system. So you have A and B that you mix together. But really, this is going to be, I mean, commercial kitchens use this. This is like the stuff that people go to use to keep their grout clean and being able to get back to that whiteness. So I really recommend using a high quality epoxy for white grout. If you're using gray or something like that, you can go with something a little bit simpler to use, but really epoxy is pretty easy to use. It's just you have to follow these steps I'm going to show you on how to go about applying it and installing it. So we'll go ahead and mix this. This is a larger bucket too. This will do the entire tub surround, but they always have a indication on the back with grout joint sizes and the size of tile and then how much grout you need. But they do make smaller portions of this. If you're a little timid about trying this, you can start with smaller batches and see how it goes, like do one wall and then work on the next. But you'll see that it's actually pretty easy when it comes to it. Now it's pretty humid in this environment right now, so it's going to take a little bit longer for it to set up so that I can remove the epoxy, but even in dry conditions, you do have plenty of working time with this. So the first thing you want to do is just get your A and B mixture packets into the bucket, and you're going to want to mix them together first. So let's just cut this open and definitely get every little bit out of these bags. It's like almost like every teaspoon makes a difference. So just really squeeze this all out. It'll make sure that you have the best consistency of grout. So just really squeeze all that excess product out of the bag. So squeeze all this stuff out. Every little drop really does make a difference. It just really makes a difference with the consistency of grout. If you leave a whole bunch of this stuff in there, your grout's going to be a lot thicker and it's going to be harder to spread. So really try to get every little bit out of here. It's kind of amazing how like 1 teaspoon can make a difference. Okay. And you definitely want to be wearing rubber gloves with this stuff. Okay, so then mix these two parts together. Okay, so then go ahead and mix your powder together. Okay, so when it comes to grout floats, there's two that I really like using. One's made by Marshalltown. This is a 4 by 12, and this is a what is this, like a 10-inch by 4-inch, and this is Trucks. So this one I primarily use for urethanes, regular traditional grouts. It has a little bit more flexibility on the corners and stuff. And it's not quite as stiff. You can definitely use this for the epoxy, but really the correct one would be this Trucks. This is an epoxy grout float, and it's just a little bit stiffer. So it allows you, the one thing about epoxy grout is that it's stiffer and it's harder. The most work you're going to be doing is actually just filling the joints. After that, it's pretty easy. But it really just comes down to packing it, and having a little bit of a stiffer trowel or a float really makes a difference. So the first step is get a clean bucket of water and just wipe down your surface of your tile. You don't want the water dripping off the tile or anything. You just want it to dampen the surface. This kind of helps glide the grout onto your joints. But like I said, you don't want to be washing out the joints. You don't want to see water running down your joints or anything. But really, it's important to clean all of the tile before you really get started on this process, because you don't really want to be picking out thin set and everything else when you're doing this, especially with epoxy, because you only have so much time with it. Typically, you have about 25 minutes after installing it before you have to remove it. So you don't want to be messing around with too much thin set. Definitely clean out all the glass and all the tile before you get started. So then it's just a matter of applying this and packing the joints. So you're just really paying attention of pressing it in to the joints, and I always just pack a arm's length. I don't scrape it off until I get everything packed. And don't worry about too much of the grout being left over on the tile. You'll find that it's really easy to remove once we get to that portion. And then you're leaving that ceiling joint free, because you're gonna be caulking that joint after the grout sets up. All right, and just take your trowel on a 45-degree angle and just try to scrape it off of the tile. Like I said, it's not a big deal if there's anything left. You just want to try to get majority of it off so you're not having to scrub too much. But with epoxy, it's really kind of nice, because when you get to the cleaning level, you don't have to worry about how much water you're using to actually remove the grout. That's one unique thing about this traditional epoxy grout, is that the water really won't wash out the joints if you give it enough time to set up. Whereas almost every other type of grout, you know, if you have too much, if you wash it off with too much water, you're going to wash out the joint. Just pay attention to your joints, make sure they're full. That's a bigger concern than getting the grout off of the tile. And you'll feel when it's kind of hard to spread. That's where just take a rag, just wipe the area down again, and then that makes it easier to glide that grout onto the surface of this. And then you leave the corners free, because you're going to be caulking at any change of plane. Any corners you need the caulk, not grout. The grout will eventually crack in a corner, so just leave that grout free. again, it's just a matter of packing these joints. It's like pancake batter. It's a pretty kind of gooey consistency. And just try to scrape off as much. I wouldn't worry too much about getting everything off because it's going to be real easy to remove with the water and scrubby pads. So, but your main concern is just making sure that you're filling these joints fully. There's nothing you can really do other than add more later to fill the joint. But scraping it off or removing the excess is not a big deal. Okay, so in these little tight corners, I like to use these margin trowels that are grout floats. That really helps out to get all the grout in here. And there's nothing really too much fun about these little nooks, but you just gotta try to get everything filled. And this is the one area that I kind of go against the recommendation of caulking all the corners. I usually just grout these corners. It just comes out neater, and you know, my thoughts are is if it ever did crack, you can always do the caulking at a later point. I guess you could do that on all areas of the tub, but in these little tiny niches, I just like to just grout all these corners. I've never really had one crack or have an issue, but it is recommended to use silicone on all change of planes. So any corner should have caulking according to the TCNA, but this is the one area that I kind of break the rules a little bit just because of the neatness and just the additional time to actually caulk that and make that look good. Okay, so with the epoxy, I would just make a nice little ball out of the rest of it, because you might need a little bit of additional grout to fill in some spots when you're cleaning it up. So you want to kind of just make it into something that's not going to dry up right immediately. So I just usually just take the rest of this and just put it into a ball, and then I can just pull some of this apart and fill in some areas that I need to when I'm doing the cleanup. Okay, so timing is somewhat important here, and I'm saying somewhat because there's a big variation of when you can still get this stuff off of here. So it's been about 20 minutes since I've done this back wall. The way that you want to test this, and it's really going to be different for everybody, it depends on the humidity that's in your home and the temperature. Right now it's 70 degrees, but it's pretty humid in here. So the way you test this is with the finger test. Just take your dry finger and press on the joint. If you're just molding the joint and you're not pulling anything off, like you basically, if it feels sticky and it's like pulling a little bit of the grout off onto your finger, just wait a few more minutes. So I'm still feeling a little bit of stickiness to it, and I'm still pulling some stuff off. I just kind of did this about 10 minutes ago. So it is still coming off on my finger. So I'm gonna give it another 10 minutes, and then I'll test an area with the scrub pad. But basically, you want to be able to scrub this and not remove any of the grout. You just want to basically mold it, or basically finish it, tool it. So we'll give it another 10 minutes and try it again. Okay, so 10 minutes later, it's feeling much better. It's definitely not pulling out on my finger anymore. So let's just go ahead and test the spot. So with the epoxy grout, you're definitely gonna have to get these scrubby pads. This is what you're gonna be basically removing a lot of that excess off. So let's just do a small section here on the glass and see if we're gonna get this grout off without running out of the joint. And then we'll just take a sponge, wipe that off, and just take a look at it. Yeah, that's gonna work fine. So as long as that's not running out of the joint, then you can just go ahead and just start scrubbing all of it in circular motions, and just paying attention to the joint and trying to tool it smooth. You're not so much smooth, you're gonna smooth it a little bit with the scrubby pad, but you're gonna be doing more of the tooling with the actual sponge. So that's one nice thing, like I was saying about the epoxy, is that you would never be able to use this kind of amount of water on a traditional grout. It would just run all the joints completely out. But with the epoxy, you know, you almost kind of need it to get the excess off and scrub it. So all I'm going to be doing is just kind of paying attention to my joints and trying to smooth them out with the scrubby pad. And then I'll further do that with the actual sponge when I go to wipe it off. But the circular motions will help remove it without dragging too much out of the joint. Okay, and then with the sponge, I kind of just go diagonally on it. And again, tooling the joint so that it's nice and smooth. This is where you're going to be doing most of that work with the sponge, and it should just depress a little bit and be easy to smooth out. Okay, then I just take a microfiber cloth and just wipe this down. This will help eliminate spotting on the tile from the excess water drying with the epoxy. So if you just take a microfiber cloth and just wipe it down on the area that you just told. This also give you a little bit of better chance to look at these joints better. Make sure they're nice and smooth. And then you work your way down. Okay, so for your caulking against your tile and the ceiling and the edges here, I really like using Sherwin-Williams 1050 QD. That QD is made for quick dry. And this is a siliconized acrylic. So the siliconized part of it is what really makes it last, and that's why I like to use it. And the acrylic allows me to paint it. So I would definitely recommend using a siliconized acrylic caulk for your ceiling joint and against your tile. So caulking the tub, since we did white grout, I didn't go ahead and spend the money for the matching caulk because it is white and I'm going to be doing white against the tub. So I just use a standard white silicone made for kitchen and bath. So this is just 100% silicone white. And my best advice is just to not cut the tip too far, just cut it down to about 3/16 of an opening. But pay attention to how big of a gap that you need to actually fill and kind of go off of that. So we'll just basically try to be as continuous as possible with the caulking gun. Just trying to get the straightest bead that you can. Okay, then just take some clear Windex and spray that joint all the way down. And what this will do is eliminate that from smearing onto the actual tile, so then you can just finger it and remove the excess. And you can remove the excess without actually smearing it on the tile. The Windex keeps that from smearing on it. Glass area might be a little tough. Okay. Okay, so when you go caulking the tub, fill up the tub first. Now this is an American cast tub, so there's not going to be any real flexibility to it, but if you have an acrylic tub, it's really important to fill the tub first because the weight of that water will make the tub flex a little bit and expand that grout joint around the edge. You're not going to be able to really notice it by the eye, but if you go to silicone it without filling the tub, that weight of the water will make that stretch that silicone and it won't last as long. So if you want a long lasting caulk joint, fill the tub first and then caulk. So I hope I have demonstrated this well enough for you and you picked up some tips that are going to help you out with your own project. If you have any questions about your own specific project, leave a comment below and please like this video. This really helps out the algorithm to get these videos out to more people. So thanks so much and I'll see you in the next one.